Okay, good morning and welcome everybody. Thank you for bearing with us. We were just waiting a few minutes to see if some of the other RSVPs were going to join us. And Gail was telling me that the parking is particularly confusing and that there was a risk that people were lost in the building. So thank you for your patience while we waited to see that we could have maximum attendance at this event. Welcome to ENS. We are very honored today to be able to host this workshop for the ARB. In association with MASA and the PR agency. We have a very busy lineup for the day, and certainly from chatting to some of you before, I know that you have lots of comments that you want to share in the comments section at the end. So I'm shortly going to hand over to Gail to kick us off. But before I do so, I wanted to contextualize why we as a firm are interested in the draft sustainability code and the development that's actually taking place in this room today. It's quite an auspicious day to be sitting here at the launch of a code that will, I think, really help to drive our sustainability jurisprudence, for lack of a better word, forward. So when we first started speaking to our clients about the emerging risks facing their business under the banner of ESG, we obviously considered physical risks, the obvious ones, the risk of extreme weather events on business premises, the risk that workforce would have to be able to work under different climatic conditions than previously had perhaps been planned for. We talked about transitional risks, the risks relating to policy changes, to the regulatory changes that we inevitably will see as a result of the global shift to a greener and more sustainable economies. So, for example, if in future, as is very likely to be the case, as you'll have seen with all of the developments in this particular context, in future, as businesses are required to make mandatory disclosures relating to their emissions, their water use and waste, how does that affect their operations? How does the requirement for mandatory disclosures drive their operations? And how does the global policy direction that we see, and obviously that's a shifting question all the time, what the global policy direction is, but how does that impact businesses who've not yet evolved to operate sustainably against these key markers? And how does the changing stakeholder sentiment affect business? So those are the questions that we've been grappling with over the last couple of years with clients. And as globally the market has become more aware of these risks and the corresponding opportunities that go together with these risks, a shifting and an uncertain environment has emerged. Of course, there are quantifiable benefits to publicly disclosing the sustainability of your business operations, and so marketing departments, of course, have also been quite involved in wanting to really proudly say what businesses have done to become more sustainable. It's important to highlight for your stakeholders the evolution that your business has undertaken, and in certain sectors, as some of you will know, where you need to highlight certain aspects around your sustainability journey in order to make your product attractive to your consumer base. So as we all strive together in this global endeavor to make our economies more sustainable, there's this tension and this need to make these claims. There's a need to put things out into the public, and that is driven by all sorts of different factors. So we've seen a proliferation of businesses making sustainability claims. But in the absence of hard black letter law, which is where we currently find ourselves in most instances, although of course there are certain parameters that are already in force and that are applicable, in the absence of hard black letter law regulating the shift to sustainability, the response of business has been varied. And we've certainly experienced that. And it becomes difficult for stakeholders dealing with this varied response, whether they be investors, regulators, consumers, to make informed decisions. And then this, of course, creates the space for stakeholders to be misled. And this unsubstantiated or misleading information in the market poses a risk not only to the stakeholders themselves, but also to the businesses in the form of reputational risk. We spend quite a lot of time talking to clients about managing reputational risk and ensuring market integrity as a result thereof. So the ARB Sustainability Code is obviously very important to the market, as it's providing those parameters that the market's been asking for to ensure that business can navigate this risk of making unsubstantiated claims and the risk of greenwashing. And Gail, I think, will talk a bit later about greenwashing versus green hashing. Because, of course, we also don't want a situation where business doesn't make claims around their own sustainability efforts, because that has a dampening effect on people actually driving sustainability within their operations and evolving. And that evolution is critical for the global imperative to try and operate with an eye on the future, as opposed to only an eye on profit. So the content of the code will no doubt be debated and discussed, and certainly speaking to some of you, you already all have thoughts and comments to share during the participation process, which the ARB is kicking off today. But the fact of the code itself is a very positive indicator. And as lawyers always looking to mitigate our clients' risk, the code is certainly another tool for us to help our clients to manage that risk. And so we certainly are very excited to have this opportunity to help this workshop to kick off and for the code to be introduced to all of you. And we certainly look forward to being involved in the commenting process ourselves. So thank you very much. And Gail, I'll hand over to you.
Can I have my presentation, please? There we go. Okay, I'm going to just start with some quick thank yous because I'm amazed by what we've pulled together today. Angela has drafted us a draft sustainability code out of love for the topic. I haven't paid her a cent. She's done it out of sheer love for the topic. So thank you very much to Angela. I met Jessica at a conference and said, would you one day maybe like to host a workshop on sustainability? And she said yes, thinking I think that I would never take her up on that. And here we are eating delicious snacks, enjoying ENS, all thanks to Jessica. Thank you, Jessica and ENS. This is an amazing venue. And then Brian, I think I could say to Brian, come, let's go outside and climb a tree, and that will be good for the industry. And he'd go, sure, Gail, if you want to do that, we can do that. He supports me no matter what crazy plan I come up with. So thank you, everyone, for helping us bring this together. I'm going to just talk briefly about the role of self-regulation. Or maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not. There we go. What the Advertising Regulatory Board is, our PR people have told me I have to stop saying ARB and I have to only say Advertising Regulatory Board so that you all remember that word. I'm not going to do that, okay? Members of the board who are in the audience, please do not tell on me. I can't. So the ARB is the industry self-regulation, self-regulate of the content of advertising. What's important there? Industry. We belong to the industry. The industry makes the rules, and that's what's happening here today. The industry is coming together to have input into a new set of rules. Self-regulator, we're not government, we are the industry coming together to make rules about advertising with the exception of the Electronic Communications Act. We don't have any statute giving us this power. It is an industry self-regulation effort, and it's about the content of advertising. Please do not come and ask me any questions about how far from the edge of the road your billboard needs to be. I do not know. I can tell you what needs to be on that billboard. Okay, so content of advertising, self-regulation, and the industry are the important things there. I don't even know which button I push. Next slide, please. I'm giving up on this. Next slide, please. Okay, no, that's an old slide. Okay, great. Okay. The next question is, why do we bother with this? Why have we not sat back and said, you know what, eventually there's going to be some law about this, and that law will be fine, and let's sit back and wait for that law. And it goes to what self-regulation is all about. And my picture there is kind of, without you realizing it, what self-regulation is all about. When we were told that load shedding would end, did anybody in the room believe that? Okay. For a while it looked like we were wrong and it had ended, but it's back. Why didn't we believe it? We didn't believe it because it has been said to us so often, and it's never true, and there's nobody to step in and fix that, and fix the fact that things are being said that aren't true. We don't want your advertising claims to fall on consumers the way the promise about load shedding fell on our ears. We want people to believe advertising claims. We want people to act on advertising claims. We want them to go and buy things because of advertising claims. They're only going to do that if they trust the advertising space. And they're only going to trust the advertising space if they know that there's somewhere they can go when there's something wrong, that there's someone who will do something if they are lied to. And that's what self-regulation is all about. It's about protecting consumers, but it's also about protecting the advertiser so that when they make claims, they will be believed, because if they're not true, someone will do something. Should I try and click the clicker, or? I clicked the back one. Okay. Self-regulation is fast. In the advertising space, we cannot wait for 5 years. I mean, if you look at the code we've done, this has actually taken us a slightly long time, Angela. But we cannot sit back and wait 10 years to do something about changing rules. We cannot sit back and wait 6 months to deal with a complaint about advertising. It has to be fast. It has to be cheap for the consumer. You can complain to the ARB for free, unlike taking something to court, and it's much cheaper for a competitor to come to the ARB than to go to court. It keeps decisions. This slide, every time I make a presentation, I promise myself I'll fix this slide. It should say, keeps decision-making in the hands of industry. Okay, it's decision-making about the rules, and it's decision-making about how those rules are applied, and that's what's happening here today. It's based on an international code, and Angela's work has very much been informed by the international codes. We are not the only people in the world who regulate advertising like this. It's done all over the world. The whole of Europe, most of the Americas, Australasia. The big missing piece is the rest of Africa. And it's an interesting one, because what I'm seeing is it's because the rest of Africa is so scared of their governments that they're scared to self-regulate. We are lucky enough in South Africa that not only does our government allow us to self-regulate, they're in fact in the room today supporting us in our efforts of self-regulation. So that's something, anytime you're feeling a bit about South Africa, the level of freedom of speech we have here is incredible compared to the rest of Africa. And the last thing is, we've got to be dynamic to change. And again, that's what's happening in the room today. We have seen that there is a hole in the regulations, and we're stepping in and we're filling it. And as an industry, we're going to work together to make it work. Okay. The Code of Advertising Practice, just so you know, there are these various sections. What we're looking at today, in fact, Section 1, definition and how to interpret. Section 2, the general rules. If you're feeling very curious after this and you want to read more, Section 2 is the one to read. Section 3, specific rules about specific industries where it can be short. The procedural guide, how do we have to do our jobs? What do you have to do? How many days? Blah, blah, blah. And the appendices, which is where we are today. This is when a specific industry needs something bigger. They need a set of rules. So the last one that was introduced was the vapor products in appendix, which was another hole that we needed to fill. Next slide. I'm just giving up on my thingy. So the process for now. We're going to allow until the end of June for written input on the code. We're going to share it with all our members as well. We'll draft any changes coming out of that input, and then we will circulate it to our members. I've underlined the word members there. This is the public commentary process, but it's our members who are going to approve it. If you're sitting in the room as a company that is not a member of an ARB member, and the two that are particularly relevant to you today are the CTFA. I know some of you in the room are members of the CTFA, and Adelia is here, and MASA. If you're not a cosmetics product, MASA is probably where you belong, and Brian is going to tell us a little bit more about MASA membership at the end. It's through those industry members that you really get to be a part of what goes into new codes, approving it, disapproving of it, and being part of the decision-making process through the representation on the appeal forums as well. We will then publish the code, and then hopefully we will start applying it to complaints, because we can only act if we get a complaint. So we're going to be dependent on consumers bringing complaints to us and companies keeping an eye on each other. And then, really important, this is a first draft. If it's not working, if we've missed something, if the wording was clumsy and we didn't realize, we don't have to go through 5 years like a regulation to change. We can change it every year. We can update it. We can add to it. This is the first iteration of a new sustainability code. It's the beginning of a journey, and Angela started us on that journey, and I'm handing over to her now.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. All right. Okay. Let's see if the clicker works for me. Or must I wait? Like that. Okay, that's not my slide. Okay, thank you. So I'm Angela Barter, as you all know, and I always like to give, can I turn this down a little bit? Believe it or not, I'm whispering. I probably don't even need this. Thank you. So I just want to give you just some contents of today. I'm going to do just a quick introduction so you know who I am. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the existing claims so you know where we're coming from. Then I want to just highlight the sources of reference. As Gail mentioned, we're focusing a lot on international code. So I just want to show you the resources that I've worked from. And then I'm going to touch on some of the general principles, and then we're going to whiz through the environmental claims. Oh, thank you. Oh, look at that. Thank you, Sandile. So just a little bit about me. I have been in the PR industry for over 25 years, been running the PR agency for 22 years. And 15 years ago, I started my journey in terms of sustainability communication. And as Gail said, it started as a passion. And now the PR agency is a fully fledged, evidence-based sustainability communication agency, where we actually help other companies to tell their sustainability story without greenwashing. I have been talking about greenwashing for 15 years, both globally and locally. So it's quite amazing that I get to stand here today and share in this process, which actually started 2 years ago. I did my master's in environmental management from Stellenbosch University. And I called up Gail, didn't know who she was at the time. I was just phoning the Advertising Regulatory Board. And I said, hi, I'm Angela, and I just want to let you know I've just finished my master's. And my thesis was around regulatory advertising codes about greenwashing. And I just want to say that I think South Africa's lagging in your environmental claims. And there was silence. And then I got the answer, well, what are you going to do about it? And here I am, 2 years later. So that's pretty much just a quick introduction of why I'm here. So it has been a passion project. And I must say this is a first draft. So it is based on a culmination of environmental claims and standards from different international codes. And we're here today to see, which of those are applicable for South Africa. We're also going to, actually, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So I think I want to start off by just explaining and unpacking what an environmental claim is. Sorry, just give me a second, yeah? come prepared with notes. Okay, so I think it's important that everyone understands that an environmental claim is any claim about the environmental attributes or the impact of a product or business that includes claims such as the claims that a product that a business might have to say, like, we do not have a negative impact on the environment. It is usually based on either the composition of products, the way it's been manufactured, and the way it's been disposed of, especially when it comes to the reduction of energy and pollution. Now, I've also added the current environmental claim statement that is on the current Appendix G of the Advertising Regulatory Board. I'm sure we'll be able to share this slide with you, so I'm not going to go through everything, but there was originally a statement about what an environmental claim is. Next slide. So, why are robust environmental claims so important? When it comes to the marketing and advertising about the environment, it is very, very important that the claims that we present are robust, substantiated, and backed up by verifiable evidence. The reason why the claims are important, number one, it can help educate consumers about the environmental impacts and of the products and services of a company. Education is super important. Number two, it helps them to make better informed decisions that will help them to lower their environmental impact. And also lastly, it can help drive companies and businesses to actually develop products that are better for the environment. So the true value of environmental claims actually relies on the genuine benefit that those claims have on the environment. Now, false, misleading claims can undermine this confidence and can also lead to unfair competition between businesses. Next slide. So let's understand what a misleading environmental claim is. So environmental claims, we know, are related to a business's products, environmental attributes, and the impact on the environment. But a misleading environmental claim is when those claims are not properly substantiated. It contains false information. Even omitting information can be seen as misleading. Some of those claims can be exaggerated, and if I've got time, I can share some examples. And most of the times, the claims are vague. They are unclear, ambiguous, or presented in an inaccurate manner. So consumers' decisions today are increasingly influenced by the desire to reduce the environmental impact, right? Consumer awareness about the environment has increased. So it is important as advertisers, as marketers, that when we give information that our consumers can trust. They are in the position where it's very difficult for our consumers or audiences to self-assess the accuracy of environmental claims. So it's up to us to be able to make sure that we are relaying that information accurately and responsibly. Okay. So just some of the existing claims that if you go onto the website, just so you know where we come from. The existing claims have some general claims, absolute claims and statements that you'll be able to just read through. I'm not going to touch on them now. And we started with 3 claims: recyclable, degradable, and ozone friendly. Today's claims, next slide, is a little bit more expanded. Today, we are looking at claims of compostability, degradability, recyclability, recycled content, circularity, designed for disassembly, extended life, refillable, reusable, free of, and then climate-related claims that are still evolving: carbon footprint, carbon neutral, carbon offset, and renewable energy. So just to highlight the sources that I have used, and also just to go back, to the slide of the claims. This is the first draft. This is our first iteration. There are going to be claims that are not added yet, maybe such as sustainability, the word itself, organic, that we need to look at. But the good news is that it can be added. And this is why you guys are all here today, is to help us to look at the existing codes and then to see what needs to be added. And keep in mind, this is the first iteration as well. So your comments and suggestions are very, very welcome. Thank you. So just an overview of some of the sources. So our main foundational source that we've used is based on the International Chamber of Commerce, the ICC. But with that, we have looked across the globe at advertising regulatory standards, including Canadian Standards Association, Commerce Commission of New Zealand, the Danish Consumer Ombudsman, the European Commission. Next slide. We've looked at France. We've based a lot of our claims, especially around compostable and degradable. We've looked at the SABS for that. We've also looked at the UK Department of Energy Climate Change, and we've started looking at a couple of the scientific papers as well, especially around claims that need reliable scientific evidence to back up the claim. Okay, so before I go through each of the different claims, we've also put together some general principles that I just want to touch on. And if you can just go to the next slide. The first one is we need to make sure that our environmental claims are honest, that they're relevant, that they are not misleading or deceptive in any way. We need to make sure that our claims are specific, clear, and free of ambiguity or exaggeration. We need to start moving away and avoiding general environmental claims like eco-friendly, green. I mean, what do those claims actually mean? They are very vague. So we need to make sure that we avoid it, and we also need to avoid implying a broader environmental benefit to products. And that's sometimes what happens, right? Someone will say eco-friendly, and you assume that the whole product you're looking at is good for the environment. So we need to make sure honest, clarity, and specific. Then substantiation by reliable scientific evidence. A lot of the claims we're talking about today have to be backed up by science. They have to have testing methodologies in place. So making sure that we can substantiate those claims are very, very important. Then I mentioned as well, we need to make sure that those environmental claims provide a genuine environmental benefit, right? That we avoid greenwashing, that we're actually making a difference. Then avoiding misleading claims. So do not imply that an environmental claims applies to a whole product when it only pertains to a specific part, right? You're implying a broader environmental impact. And always make sure that you indicate that you are referring to the specific ingredient, component, or packaging. Okay, next slide. In terms of the product life cycle, sorry, it's actually one back, I think. Yes, I think it's jumped a little bit. So let's just have a look at the qualification of claims there. So qualifications must be clear, prominent, and readily understandable. And when you make a qualification, it should be in close proximity to the claim that you are making as well. It's pointless having it separately. So that is what the qualification of claims refers to there. Comparative claims are also need to be taken into consideration. They need to be clearly disclose the method of comparison, and we're going to go through that when I go through the claims. In terms of product life cycle, which is the next page, the environmental claim should not be presented in a way as to imply that they relate to more stages of the product life cycle than they actually are, and it should always be justified by evidence. I will share this slide again, so you'll be able to read it in more detail. And then we have component reduction claims, which talks to which claim, when we talk about the reduction claim, is when, for example, free of, which we'll go through a little bit more detail. But generally, they should not be based on the absence of a component, ingredient, feature, or impact that has never been associated with a product category. And then the last two in terms of general claims is my favorite, the eco label, the self-endorsed logos that are everywhere, such as EcoSmart. That's going to change. The EU Green Directive is making big headways in terms of credible eco labels. Environmental signs, symbols, certification should clearly indicate their source and should never apply a third party or official approval. And the last claim, or last general principle, are the aspirational claims, I think, that we're seeing a lot of. To substantiate aspirational claims, we need to make sure that we have appropriate evidence establishing that there are reasonable plans in place to achieve the stated aspiration. We can't just state that this is what we're going to achieve. At the end of the day, who is actually going back to make sure that those aspirations are being realized? Okay. So I'm really going to whiz through these claims. I really want to try and give you a little bit more context as well so that you can understand. And once again, if there are comments, suggestions, please there were notepads. Everyone's got notepads. Okay. It would be great if you can just jot them down. So let's talk about compostable. So compostable refers to the characteristic of a product or packaging that allows it to break down or biodegrade and become part of usable compost, such as humus and mulch, in an appropriate composting facility. And I'm going to highlight when I say appropriate composting facility. So perhaps you can just go to the claims. Thank you. So for composting to take place, it requires certain conditions. It requires air, sunlight, moisture. And for that to happen, so composting is a waste treatment process, and it needs those aerobic conditions to be able to break down. The problem is that a lot of these products that say they are compostable, if they end up in landfill does not present the correct conditions. The landfill is anaerobic. It doesn't have sunlight. It doesn't have air. So it's not going to break down according to the claims. Now, composting is used in farming, it's used in gardening, it's used as a soil conditioning. So we need to make sure that anything that breaks down into compost needs to not be harmful to the environment. So plant and animal waste is naturally compostable, but other products that we're seeing, such as packaging, bags, cups that are saying that they are compostable, need to be held to certain testing standards to actually show that they will biodegrade, not have a negative effect on the compost, and not negatively affect the environment. All of these claims that we're talking about today do need to be aligned with South African legislation. I think that's going to be the next journey that we're going to go on as well. So if you do have any commentary or suggestions with regards to that, please feel free, as well as the sources. If there's a particular source or reference that you think that we should be looking at, please let us know as well. So if we look at compostable, see if I can get my notes out rather. So no claims may be made about the compostability of a product or packaging unless the claims can be substantiated that the whole product or packaging can be broken down, if that makes sense now, that it can be part of usable compost and it can break down in a timely manner. And it needs to be done in an appropriate composting facility. Now, it is also important that we should clearly disclose the type of composting facility, whether it is home or industrial. Now, a lot of people don't know that. So when you have a compostable product, not every compostable product is suitable for home composting because the conditions are not right. So it needs to go to an industrial or municipal facility to be able to break down to the point where it can become usable compost. So it is important that we need to disclose which composting facility it is available. So for example, a business produces plastic cups and it's been certified by a third party as being industrial compostable. But when they advertise, they say certified compostable. They don't say home or industrial. So what happens is that as consumers, what do? We go, well, it's going to end up in landfill. It's going to decompose when it's supposed to be industrial. So that is what this claim is really trying to allude to. Then if you make a home compostability claim, you need to make sure that if it requires tools, if it requires extra work, you have to let the consumer know. Next slide. So the claim is also, I think that's it. Next one. Okay. So in terms of degradable, degradable is a characteristic of specific conditions that allow specific conditions to break down the product into elements known to nature within a given time. So, for example, where we talk about compostable being a soil conditioner, a degradable product actually undergoes changes to its chemical state, which eventually leads to disintegration. Next slide, thank you. So some common types of degradability claims is biodegradability. So that's broken down by natural organisms, photodegradability, sunlight, marine, water. And if we look at some of the claims here, it is important that the substantiation that the whole product or packaging will, within a short time, break down and return to nature. We also need to make sure that we avoid deception about the ability of that product and package to break down in environments where it's commonly disposed of, for example, in a landfill. As we know now, landfills do not provide those conditions for biodegradability. Okay. Then we also need to look at the rate and extension of degrading. So the rate and extent can take a very long time. So we need to make sure that we are not deceptive in our advertising and marketing at how long it will actually take for something to biodegrade. And also we need to make sure that only when we talk about degradability claims, it can only be made if the byproducts do not contain or release substances that are harmful for the environment. So materials such as paper, for example, can take a very long time to decompose or biodegrade in a landfill, even though it is paper. So it is important that when we substantiate a claim, that we know that normally it is not possible or takes a very long time in a landfill. Okay. Actually, just staying on this claim, it is important when it comes to degradability claims that it is substantiated by specific test methods, especially that we include the maximum level of time that it takes to degrade. And also, we need to indicate which waste stream it is destined for. Is it destined for home, municipal, industrial? Okay. Is everyone still with me? Okay. I hope I'm making it in an explainable way as well. So, all right. So in terms of recyclables, so this is a characteristic or component that enables this product to be diverted from the waste stream through available processes or programs such as take-back programs or drop-off programs that can be collected, it can be processed and returned to be used in the form of new materials or new products. At the end of the day, the user must be able to return their product for further processing so that it can be manufactured into another product. So the claims here, just to highlight what I've just said, you need to be able to substantiate, and also just to highlight clause 4.1 of section 2 falls under substantiation. So wherever you see clause 4.1, we are referring to the substantiation claim on the Advertising Regulatory Board. So the product and packaging, you need to substantiate that it can be diverted through different recycling programs. And second of all, you need to clearly specify the product or packaging, and if it's one of the components and which one is actually recyclable. I think so many people make claims where they, for example, will say, I'm just using an example, that this pen is recyclable, but in actual fact, just the top silver metal part is. It is misleading and it is deceptive. Okay. Also, the Advertising Regulatory Board, on their previous recyclable claim, and that's, I think it's something that we need to keep in, is talking about just because something is technically recyclable, we need to make sure that it is, that the facilities are available for recycling as well. And a lot of the global standards do talk about that. And I think it's something that Gail and I are in discussion as well about facilities existing. So it's something we need to work on. I think we also need to look at the legal stance of that. But at the end of the day, the product that needs to be recycled, there needs to be a market for it. Okay. Thank you. So in terms of the recycled content, just to, can we go back one just for the definition? Thank you. So this is when a portion of the product is made from materials recovered or otherwise diverted from the waste stream, either during the manufacturing process, which is pre-consumer waste, or it's post-consumer waste, so after consumer waste. Once again, we need to look at the legalities regarding these industries. And thank you. Next slide. So here we need to make sure that when we talk about recycled content, that unless it is composed of materials that have been recovered or otherwise diverted from the waste stream, either during the pre or post-consumer phase. What's also important is, I think everyone knows the Mobius loop, right? The 3 chasing arrows. The Mobius loop is used for recyclability. Now, to make it a recycled content, the SABS highlights that a percentage, and a lot of the other global, you'll see I've actually put in the different sources there, actually highlight that the percentage of recycled content should be clearly stated inside. So for example, this product is made of 30% recycled content. We need to avoid using claims such as up to 10%, because up to could mean 1%. Okay, so we need to avoid using those claims, and we always need to focus on claiming the minimum percentage that we possibly can. Then, in terms of recycled content plan, we need to clearly indicate, once again, what part is recycled content. What are we talking about? Are we talking about the product, or are we talking about the packaging? Remember I said to you in the beginning, we want to avoid implying a broader environmental benefit. So we need to be clear on what we are talking about when it comes to that. We also need to investigate further down the line some of the more advanced recycling. There's molecular recycling, there is chemical recycling. So we need to, once again, I think, start looking at those claims in a little bit more depth in terms of regulations and standards regarding that. So as an example of recycled content, a tissue box, right? The claim is 100% recycled. What does that mean to you? Is the tissue box from recycled content, or are the tissues from recycled content? It's not clear. Right? So that goes back to our general environmental claims, our principles, right? To avoid vague, unsubstantiated claims. Rather, if we had put this box contains 65% recycled material, that feels a little bit more clearer, doesn't it? Okay. So I mentioned exaggerated claims, and I found a really good example that I wanted to share with you. And I'm starting to see it a lot more. A claim was made that says, now 100% more recycled content. I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds good. But it could be misleading, because what if I said to you this product had initially 1% recycled content, then doubled it? Technically, it's true, right? It's 100%. Okay, but it is vague, it's unsubstantiated. Okay, so I hope that's just making what I'm trying to present to you clearer. Okay, next one. So the next three, we're going to talk about circularity, designed for disassembly, and extended product life. All of these claims aim to do 2 to 3 things that are very important: reduce resources, reduce waste, and also reduce climate impact. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do here with these 3 claims is to keep products in circulation and in the economy for longer, to avoid it going to landfill. So circularity refers to the circular economy, and at present, and I must state, when I started this 2 years ago, a lot of the sources and references that I have used have changed, because sustainability claims are ever evolving. And we're at the stage now where at present there is no global agreement on standards to apply in connection with claims of circularity. So this will definitely, how do I put this? We need to circle back to this. Designed for disassembly, let's have a look at that. Disassembly. Oh, sorry, so there's the circularity. So at the moment, once again, everything just needs to be substantiated and based on reliable evidence. But I have put the note there that it is currently evolving. Thank you. So, designed for disassembly. So this claim is for products that have been designed to be disassembled, to break down into certain components that can be recycled. Now, when we talk about designed for disassembly, it needs to come with a statement explaining which components or parts are we talking about. It needs to have clear information on how to disassemble. You can actually go to the next slide. I'll come back. There we go. So it needs to talk about the information on how to disassemble and manage the parts for disassembly. And also, very importantly, who is responsible for the disassembly of the parts. So remember, we spoke about earlier about the different waste streams, knowing where it goes. Is it home composting? Is it industrial composting? Once again, where are these parts going? Is it the consumer's responsibility to disassemble it? And if it is the information available to them? And if it's a specialist, where do we as consumers go? What facilities are available for that? And once again, the advertiser should specify which parts of the product can be reused, recycled, recovered, and the process for each. It's all about clarity and being specific. So I've got an example here. So an example claim would be, this product has been designed to be disassembled into parts that can be recycled. This can be done via our outlets in X, Y, Z. Clear, specific, providing the information. Next one. Extended product life. So once again, we are wanting to reduce our resources, we're wanting to reduce waste, and a lot of the products that claim extended product life must be able to substantiate the claim, be it through improved durability or upgradability. Next slide. Verifiable evidence, reliable evidence that can be substantiated. Examples would be comprehensive records and test data of the durability of the product. And actually, some of the claims say it should be maintained, those records, to be able to be substantiated and to support the claim. Now, when it comes to upgradability, this is very important that specific information needs to be provided to the consumer on how to achieve that upgrade. You can't just make a claim and not have the information, the explanatory information to back up what you're saying. So, for example, this product is designed to have a life that is 50% longer than last year's model. Upgrade models that extend the service life of this product is available from. So if we look at the claims, we need to make sure that the specific information is given required the upgrade. must be clear and accessible. How do you achieve that upgrade? Also, when you are talking about extended product life, especially when it comes to comparative claims, you need to make sure that you are clear on what you are comparing it to. Are you comparing it to your competitor, an earlier version of your own product, or a substitute of a similar product? It's also very important that you specify the feature that actually extends the product life. Next one. So, refillable and reusable. We are starting to see this claim happen quite a bit. And in a nutshell, refillable is the characteristic that the product or packaging that you've purchased can be refilled with the same or similar product more than once in its original form, without additional processing, so without additional effort, so unless it's washing, cleaning. Reusable, next one, on the other hand, is designed to, the product is designed to be used more than one application, more than one rotation for the same purpose. So for example, a reusable bag or a reusable water bottle. Now, unless that product or packaging can be refilled or reused with the same or similar substance, or can be used more than once, the claim shouldn't be made. And if there are limitations, these should be disclosed. Next slide. So that just sums up that. So once again, if you do have comments, suggestions, additional references or sources that talks to this claim, please let us know. So just staying on here. So for example, a soda bottle says that it is refillable, right? Sounds great, sounds green, sounds environmental, but the problem is unless those facilities are available for that soda bottle to be refilled, the claim is deceptive. So another example is a glass wine bottle, right? To say that the glass wine bottle is refillable means that there are programs and facilities in place where that wine bottle will be collected, taken back, refilled, and brought back. Taking your wine bottle to the wine farm and getting it filled up per liter doesn't substantiate the claim. Okay. Free of. Okay, I think this is self-explanatory. This is when a product does not contain a particular ingredient or component. And free of can relate to, as many of you know, to the health industry, but it also relates to the environmental industry as well. This claim needs to be substantiated with reliable scientific evidence and established testing methodologies. That the specified substance that you are saying is free of or does not contain, it must make sure that it does not exceed levels greater than those found, next slide, greater than those found in what they call trace contaminant. So this is primarily refers to the manufacturing impurities, and it should not exceed levels greater than the background level. And this is typically when we talk about the context of naturally occurring ingredients in those substances. Don't make claims of free of if your substance is no longer used, that's misleading, were never used, or perhaps was used but not used anymore. So an example here is pesticide-free. So an organic product mentions that their products are pesticide-free, but organic farming is organic farming because they don't use pesticides. So the claim is deceptive and misleading. Also, don't make the claim of free of if your product contains another product that could be harmful to the environment. So claims like microplastic free, we added this in, are emerging claims that need to be considered. Other emerging claims that are coming out, for example, not made with fossil fuels. These are all coming out, but regulatory frameworks at the moment are still evolving, especially in terms of claims of microplastic, which are still remain in flux at the moment. But at the end of the day, claims need to be substantiated with evidence. So, an example again, paper, claiming that it does not contain tropical hardwood. All right, so this is taken from the Canadian advertising standards. And they use this example, the paper does not contain tropical hardwood. It is misleading because to the typical consumer, they assume that tropical hardwood is used in the paper manufacturing business, but it never is. It's not used. So they are making a claim that is deceptive, making the consumer think that, okay, this is an issue, so this product must have an environmental benefit. I've got to get this product. Okay. All right, then the last little bit. These are the climate-related claims, and these are very, very scientific in nature. These are still evolving. Every time I go back to a source or reference, it's been updated. And I think that's important to know that even though this is first draft, this is going to be a section that will need to be reviewed annually to make sure that we are aligning ourselves with global standards, that we are putting our best foot forward and best practice when it comes to the different claims. So just to give a little bit of background in terms of carbon claims. So many of these claims, as I mentioned, a lot of them are aspirational at the moment. I think a lot to do with 2030, making sure that companies they relate their goals to reducing, neutralizing a company's environmental impact, be it on their products, their service, or company operations. So I want to clarify what is meant by greenhouse gas emissions. I don't want to assume that you know. So according to the Kyoto Protocol, there are 6 greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide is one of the main or primary gases, but there's also methane, right? There are nitrous oxide, hydrofluorocarbons. There's a lot. But a lot of the time people refer to greenhouse gases, they think just carbon dioxide. So I just wanted you to understand that there's carbon dioxide and then there's greenhouse gases as a whole. Now, the impact of greenhouse gas emissions on the climate is usually measured, or is measured, in carbon dioxide equivalent. So let's have a look at some of the definitions, just so that you can get your head around some of the terminology. So a carbon footprint is a way of reporting the impact of climate change from a product, service, or business operation. And it's usually based on a full assessment that evaluates all aspects of greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm sure you've heard of the term cradle to grave, all right? That is measuring from the extraction of the raw material through to the processing, through to the actual use, right through to end of life disposal. Next slide. Carbon offsets are the credits purchased for emission reduction from other actions such as tree planting, as an example, and this usually takes place outside of the actual operations of the business. These offsets can be purchased in the marketplace and traded to individuals or businesses to help them to reduce their residual emissions. Now, it is important to inform consumers when you are using these claims, carbon-related claims, of what is being offset and how it is being offset. Next one. We are seeing a lot more carbon-neutral claims. I've come across a lot of rulings globally where, for example, dairy farms are making carbon-neutral claims. And unless it's substantiated, they are being called out for greenwashing. Carbon neutral means that the net carbon footprint, right, the greenhouse gas emissions, is 0. Now, for this to happen, you need to calculate the total emissions of the greenhouse gases of the product. And at the end of the day, those calculations need to come to zero. Okay, let's go to net zero. So on the other hand, net zero is the overall balance between the greenhouse gases that are being produced and the amount being removed from the atmosphere. So net zero is reached when the amount of greenhouse gases that we add is no more than what we are taking out. Now, both of the above, carbon neutral and net zero, involves emission reduction strategies and carbon removal, which is where the carbon offsetting comes in. Next slide. So claims 8.1, 2, and 3. In a nutshell, all of these tell you that carbon-related claims need to be supported by reliable scientific evidence. At the end of the day, we need to realize that it's about reduction first. Always seek to reduce the emissions, to minimize those emissions internally first, then the residual emissions can be offset by carbon offsets, and that is how it's supposed to be happening. But as we know, that's not reality. We know that a lot of companies find it easier to go and get the carbon offsets than rather to, well, not easier, that they are offsetting, they're purchasing carbon offsets when they should be looking at reducing their emissions first. So we need to make sure that when there are claims of reduction, that it covers three things. Well, terms of carbon neutral: emissions measured, emissions reduced, and emissions offset. Can we go to the next slide? Next slide. Thank you. So when it comes to carbon-related claims, I've just put in italics just so that you can see the process of thinking. So we need to look at emissions measured. We need to look at the calculation of the total greenhouse gas emissions. It needs to be substantiated, and you need to specify the method, the basis, and the time frame, especially if those claims are aspirational or is a future commitment, when we need to let the consumer know when will that carbon offset or when will that carbon claim really be realized. We also need to look at the values used for translating greenhouse gas emissions. So in other words, are we using consistent timescales? Are we using consistent methodology to be able to do these calculations? And we need to be clear when we're doing our calculations. Does it refer to carbon dioxide, or does it refer to all greenhouse gas emissions? So at the end of the day, how these reductions have been primarily avoided is key. And if you are talking about future commitments, having a plan on how those carbon emissions will be realized or met that can be verified by an accredited third party is important. Also provide clear information, once again, on which portion or element of the product life you are referring to. What is being offset and how is it being offset? Once again, be specific, be clear. Now, to avoid misleading claims that carbon related, can you go to the next slide? So 8.5, to avoid misrepresentation. So to avoid misleading claims that carbon related benefit has occurred or will occur in the future, you need to clearly state the expected time period for these benefits to be realized. So guaranteeing to plant trees, as an example, cannot be used as a claim for carbon offset until those trees, that the carbon offset of those trees have been removed. And we are seeing this, I think, a lot in the airline industry as well, and various industries about tree planting. So we need to make sure that our carbon offset claims are clear. Once again, all of these climate-related claims, I said, are evolving. We need to look at legislation as well to make sure that we are aligned. Once again, if you have any sources, references, comments, suggestions regarding these claims, please reach out to us. We really want to make sure that we put our best foot forward as South Africa in terms of our environmental claims. And then lastly, renewable energy. So for now, the claim, we're focusing on renewable energy. We haven't focused on renewable materials yet. Once again, that claim also still seems to be evolving. That is something we can add on. So as an example, renewable energy is electricity derived from sources that can be replenished constantly, such as sunlight, so solar, wind, water, and there are other like geothermal. Fossil fuels like petroleum and coal are not renewable sources, just to give you an indication, all right, to explain. So next slide. Unless 100% of the energy used to produce the product or offer the service can be traced back to renewable sources, the claim cannot be used. We also need to make sure that it is substantiated, and you can substantiate renewable energy claims, for example, through REC certificates, renewable energy certificates. And once again, it is important, and I'm sure you've seen this word a lot, specify, specify, specify. We need to specify the type of renewable energy used so that we can be clear. So like I said, we are still investigating in terms of including renewable materials, but I'm sure that will add as we go. Next slide. And that's it. So
I don't know what the feeling is. I don't know what the feeling is. Should we do all our presentations, finish everything we have to say, and then open up to you guys for questions on everything? Are you all happy with that? I've got a little bit to say, Brian's got a little bit to say, and then we'll open up to questions. Everyone happy? Okay. You didn't show them your bad
Oh,
suit.
actually, sorry. As a perfect example, I won't show you the brand. So I come from Cape Town and I stayed in a hotel last night. And I was reminded last night why I'm standing in front of you today. This little box of soap was in my bathroom, and I always look at the claims at the back. It's what I do. And the claim is, with a Mobus loop, right, chasing arrows with a little leaf, 100% green and eco-friendly. So you can imagine, after what I've explained to you today, how joyful I was when I saw this. And it was a reminder of why I'm here today. So thank you for listening to me.
Okay, I just want to firstly, again, thank Angela. She's put an enormous amount of work into this. You can see that. I sit here and I think, how are we going to actually do this when we get complaints about this code? I'm not going to understand what anyone's talking about. And then I'm like, Angela will still be there. You can ask her what people are talking about. The thing that I just want to highlight here is, in commenting on the code and in us looking at the code and in how we're going to apply it when we make decisions about it, the one little red flag we all have to be aware of is that we have seen internationally, and it's actually quite an interesting phenomenon because you see it often across all sorts of things where people try to achieve something good. And in trying to achieve the something good, they achieve something bad. And I'm seeing it in two distinct areas in advertising at the moment, and this is the one. And what's happened internationally is, in trying to stop companies greenwashing, in trying to keep companies very honest about their greenwashing claims, some jurisdictions have gone so far that it becomes impossible to make any green claims. And what happens if a company can't make a green claim is they stop doing the green work. And that is a thing we want to avoid here. We don't want to be so restrictive and so difficult that companies go, you know what, I'm not even going to bother to recycle anymore. I'm not even going to bother about carbon footprints because I can't claim it. So what's the point? I'm not going to do it. So we have taken some things out of the international examples where we have felt for South Africa at the moment it is too big an ask. We have kept this in mind, but it's going to come in the interpretation of these claims as well. And it's just something I want you to know we are aware of. The net outcome of this effort should be honest green claims. The net outcome should not be no green efforts. And it is something we are aware of. So that was my little caveat that I wanted to add. And I'm now going to ask Brian, remember, I started off saying, if you want to be part of the next part of the approval steps of the code, if you want to be part of the decision-making in the decision-making bodies, you need to be a member of the ARB. If you are cosmetic, Adelia is here to speak to if you're not already a member of the CTFA. And Brian is going to just talk generally about MASA and membership of MASA.
We can, right? I don't like lecterns. Reminds me of school. Good morning, everyone. Excellent. Gail, Angela, brilliant, right? I know it took us a while to get to this point. ENS, thank you very much. Yeah, it's not every day that we industry body people get to meet in fancy offices in Sandton, so hope you have us next time again. Gail asked me to wing it and say something about MASA, but I think I'll start by prefacing this very simply, right? At the very root of all this is self-regulation, right? This new code that we are putting together is but one of many codes that the ARB administers for the marketing, advertising, and communications industry. The sum total of the industry. It's about protecting our profession. It's about us as stakeholders working together to ensure that at all times we are doing that which is right for our consumers, for our customers, for humanity, for the country, and everything related. And for me, protection of the profession is essentially this. Just to give an example, I'll pick a profession that is probably not in the room. How many of us right now can go up the road to Sandton Mediclinic and perform surgery in a theater? Is there any doctor in here? Medical doctor? No, there isn't. So why should anyone else be allowed to show up and proclaim to be a marketer or a PR practitioner or an advertiser? Why? It shouldn't be. So ultimately, for me, the work that we do with people like the ARB and a whole lot of other industry stakeholders is about keeping the profession together broadly across the entire MAC sector, and very importantly within that, ensure that we play by the rules. Clear guardrails that everyone can work to. And this code we're launching today is partly that, in a very specific area around environmental sustainability, over and above the 200 others that Gail has. So my message effectively is that unity across all of us who are interested stakeholders in this work across the entire spectrum. We need to be able to come together. You need to be in the tent in order to have a say. And to join the tent, you either join PEGEL, the ARB, or you join MASA or the insurance people. There's all sorts of formations that exist to ensure that we can all play by the rules. You can't sit outside the tent and expect your voice to be heard if you don't actively participate. And that effectively, ladies and gentlemen, is my message today. Unity, let's come together, let's all join hands, let's be members of these formations. And just in closing, sorry, I'm winging this. I have a lot of conversations at MASA about why do you exist? And of late, I've started playing that the other way. What would happen if the ARB, MASA, what is yours, the insurance one, anybody, all the industry bodies, what would happen if they did not exist? We wouldn't be having this conversation. There would be no rules. Everyone would be free to do whatever they want to do. So I know it's a bit of negative marketing in the sense, usually as marketers, we speak about why something exists, but just have a think about this, right? What would happen if all these industry bodies, I mean, the Herculean work that just Gail and her team at the ARB do around making sure that everyone plays within the rules. What would happen if the ARB did not exist? MASA, as a founding member of the ARB in 1973, if I may add, what would happen if MASA did not exist? Those are the questions we need to constantly ask ourselves, because for me, because of the passage of time and sort of just the general lack of care, I think there's a creeping habit around, meh, I don't care, I don't know. We'll deal with it when it comes. There's a reason why these things have been in existence for many, many decades. So please support us. We still take checks. If you can write a check now, we'll take a check. I'll be at the back of the room. Support us to remain, to exist, to continue existing, so that we can do this wonderful work that, sort of is for the entire industry and the country. And in closing, to bring it back home, I haven't traveled outside Africa since my corporate days when I used to work on beer and during the pandemic. Anyway, I ended up in Brussels in March this year for the World Federation of Advertisers Global Marketer Week. I haven't been to Europe for years and years. One of the things that struck me was, Brussels, chocolate, French fries. You buy a bottle of water and you know how it goes. So, hey, how come the lid is not coming off? I found that in Europe, they've moved the standard. Lids don't fall off bottles. That is because somehow, by way of European Commission and all those lovely rules, all product manufacturers came together and said, okay, fine. We shall all retool our processes such that lids don't fall off plastic bottles, which speaks to the work that Angela, Gail, and all of us are doing today. It's the simple little things like that that actually add, practical things that add to what we mean, what we do as brands, products, services. And I know in closing, marketers would be like, nah, environmental, whatnot. When I was a young marketer in my Unilever days, it's things like this that helped you to be able to say a lot of things about your brand. So if your Mobius, hello, I was listening. I didn't know it was the Mobius whatever. The thing is something that you can sing about for your brand. It actually becomes a distinctive brand asset that you can use to market your brand. So don't go saying, what the heck, rules, blah, blah, blah. Rather, read the rules, see what they can do for your brand, and use that as a unique selling proposition. Simple. That is the very simple clarity of what ultimately brand marketing is about. Using the intrinsic properties that your brand has to be able to say something new and fresh on your brand at all times. So let's not think about this as, and I'm speaking to marketers in the room, let's not think of this as policing. Let's rather embrace this and see what it does for our brands, products, services, our businesses, and ultimately we can then continue to make the argument around why we marketers remain relevant to the cause. I end there and I thank you for your time. Thank you.
Okay, so we open to questions. I'm sure most of them are going to be for Angela. Put up your hand and a microphone will come to you. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, this is for you, Angela. On the compostable and the degradable parts of the draft code, there was terminology that was used in a timely manner for compostable, and then for degradable was within a reasonably short period of time. And I just wanted to, it wasn't immediately apparent to me from the code what the standard is for those time periods. Who dictates them? What is a short period? What is reasonable? And how is that going to be measured if, for example, a complaint is raised? I have a second question, but maybe you can answer that one first.
I think that's better. My brain is exploding with words right now. So thank you for the question. Yes, so through different testing methodologies, depending on the different products, there is testing methodology based on disintegration. So I do have an example of the timely manner seems to be, for example, a disintegration is 84 days as an example, but it goes to different standards. So it'd be very interesting to find out like what industry you're from, what particular product you're looking at, and I will happily go through my notes for you and actually find out what that timely manner would mean for you in terms of your industry.
So, I mean, I'm an attorney, so I don't, I'm actually looking at it from the perspective of having a client come and be, for example, on the receiving end of a complaint from a competitor.
Yeah.
And the basis of their complaint is, well, you're making this claim.
Yeah.
And actually, we've seen that it degrades in 4 weeks. I mean, I don't know anything about this. I'm just shooting from the hip here. But then how's the question, well, is that 4 weeks a reasonable time? Because that's the word in the code. So I'm looking at it from quite a clinical perspective or a legal perspective, because it seems open to interpretation, and I'm just wondering how it would be
Well, that's great, because I'm going to call on you to help me with this. So when you have to substantiate your compostability or biodegradable claim, it has to be according to certain standards. So be it ASTM, be it SANS, we need to look at what those standards are. Once your product goes through that testing methodology, it will tell you what that maximum degrading level will be for that product. And then you will be able to then take that claim and make it.
Perhaps we can look at adding some wording to indicate that. I think
I think that's great.
I think it's a good point in terms of just adding wording, a little bit of wording around how that will be interpreted, even if it's just to say something along the lines, and I'm talking off the top of my head now, so don't hold me to it, in accordance with the standards that are appropriate for your industry.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And I think that comes into, you heard me keep saying we need to align with South African regulations, legislations. We need to look at industry legislations. So once we start pulling all that information in from industry, I think we'll be able to make that wording more precise. But thank you.
Thanks.
Tammy,
Sorry, and then
please
my
give us
second
that one.
question.
Tammy, please give us that in writing, because I will forget
Yes,
the moment I
I'll
walk out.
pop, do I just email you, Gail, or Angela? Okay. The second question was just on the refillable, reusable. And again, it was a wording question where, if I understood it correctly in the definitions, it's got to be reusable for the same purpose. And again, I don't have like a specific example, but I was just wondering, what about can you not make a reusable claim if you're looking at reuse in a creative sense versus the conventional sense? Because if I have a product, and I don't know, I don't have an example, but if I have a product in packaging and I'm saying you can reuse this, but not necessarily in the conventional manner, it can be reused for something else. According to the definition as I've read it, I can't make the claim reusable because it says for the same purpose.
So when I hear that, I hear upcycling in terms of reuse. So if you think of a product if you're going to take your olive oil and you are going to, and there's a claim that it's refillable, you are going to use a same or similar product in the original format when you go and refill at your local supermarket. You're not going to use your olive oil bottle to refill with something else, if that makes sense. So in terms of reusable, like an example is a plastic bag can claim to be recyclable, and that means it needs to be able to go to a recycling facility where it can be recycled. But if that shopping bag, if the material is not recyclable, but the claim is it can be used several times, then that claim is reusable, not recyclable. So when it comes to refillable and reusable, I think when I'm listening to you, I'm definitely going to unpack it a bit more. I think it's worth investigating. But when I listen, I hear upcycling or something like that.
And I'm thinking you can then claim anything was reusable because you can use anything in your child's art project. And then you could have things everything would become reusable if you could change the use of it.
Good morning. Hi, my name's Julie. I just have a quick question with respect to, there's a lot of products on the market these days where you are they're advertising refillable pouches to replenish the original bottle that you bought. And I was wondering about the fact that those refillable pouches still end up in a waste stream, albeit they could feasibly get into a recycle stream. But how are we with those type of products in the market? Where do we stand on that?
So I think one of the things that we have to be realistic about what the ARB can and can't achieve. And we look at the advertising claim. So we would look at that and we can go, well, is that pouch, was the word refillable? Is it refillable? If it is, then that claim is correct. Refillable with the original product that is supposed to be in it, etc., etc. Are people not refilling it? We can't make people refill pouches. You know, the claim needs to be true, but we can't make people behave perfectly when it comes to what they're doing with that at the end. I don't know if that answers it. You know, not everyone recycles, not everyone reuses. We throw away a lot of things we shouldn't, and that, unfortunately, we can't stop. But maybe somebody else can. Maybe education programs can.
Gail, if I may just add there. So I think we need to be very clear that, ARB, what we're doing here is the regulation side of it. There's a bigger aspect of this, which is about exactly education standards. And I know it's very difficult in South Africa because of competition laws to I can see Tiger Brands in the room. Who else did I see? If for argument's sake, if I was to bring Tiger Brands and PepsiCo into a room to talk about bottle caps not falling off, I would have to be very careful about collusion, competition law, whatnot. But on a normal day, if MASA was better resourced, these are the conversations we should be having as work streams as to how people can elevate whatever they do for the benefit of consumers. So for argument's sake, for instance, I could bring people into a room and say, okay, good people, let's agree what's going to happen to pouches before they are thrown into a dump. As an example, I can probably speak to Bev SA, who are the industry body that look after packaging, and say, Paul, what can we do as MASA and Bev SA to bring together, all the packaging, specialists and brand marketers to find ways to actually do this in a standardized form. But, these things are complicated because next thing you know, you're being accused of colluding on the price of bread. But it has to be done.
The lawyers in the room will protect you from collusion when you ask people to throw their rubbish in the right rubbish bin. I'm sure we've got a case there.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Perfect Kabunda, and I'm from the Hydroform International Company. I don't know if anyone know about it. So we actually into the construction industry. I know you're all surprised. However, I work in the sales and marketing department, and I'm part of the MASA Association. So this is for Mr. Brian. Yeah. So I know Enrico, and yeah, thank you. So my question is for Angela. I wanted to know because our company, we manufacture machines that make blocks. So our blocks, we use local soil, water, and a bit of cement, which is different from the conventional way of building where they use a lot of cement and also they burn their bricks. We don't burn our bricks for curing. We water our bricks. So we always advertise ourselves as green because we actually reduce the emission of carbon by not burning the bricks. And also we use local soil, meaning that we can use the soil on site, which reduces the emission of carbon by transporting the bricks from one site to another. And we also reduce deforestation because we don't cut the wood to use them for burning the bricks. Are you with me so far?
I think I'm with you so far.
Okay, so just let me know if I'm fast. Yeah, so and then also we have a thermal property which actually, because our blocks, they help the buildings to retain the heat comparing to the concrete bricks. So that means in winter, our buildings are warm inside, and then in summer, our buildings are cooler inside due to the local soil that we use for construction. Now, my question is the following. As you say that we need to be specific when we're advertising ourselves, we always tell our client that we are eco-friendly and we reduce the carbon emission when we manufacturing our blocks. Do you think perhaps we should be maybe more specific by telling the percentage of the carbon emission that we reduce the emission by? That's it.
Thank you. I think you've answered your own question. I think you have, and I must commend you on the work that you are doing to reduce your environmental footprint. It's very exciting to hear. But yes, I think it is maybe another discussion that you and I can have, but I think you've answered your own question. I do think being specific, the biggest thing to take away today is we need to avoid generalized terms like eco-friendly. What does that mean? What does eco-friendly actually mean? It sounds green. If, for example, compostable, biodegradable, it sounds green, but what does it actually mean to the average consumer? And this is what we're trying to achieve through being specific. But yes, thank you, and well done on your business.
And I'd put in there as a general advertising concept, don't just tell the truth, tell the whole truth. And then you won't go wrong. Like whatever, whether we're talking about this, whether we're talking about anything to do with advertising, if you tell the whole truth, you're pretty sure to be safe. Anyone else?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. First, a compliment, just to say thank you for initiating the work and this conversation. I'm one of Adelia's members, and she will tell you I've been chomping at the bit for something to be put in place for this. And then my question is in two parts. It's both for you, Gail, and Angela. The first part is, have any precedent-setting rulings or findings by any of your colleagues in ICAS been considered in the development of this code? And I'll just give you an example. I think about 3 years ago, there was a precedent-setting ruling that was made by the ASA in the UK in terms of proportionality, materiality, and substantiality of sustainability claims when there was a complaint about a bank that was claiming that it's financing environmental activities like growing trees and offsetting carbon outputs. The complaint was based on the fact that the bank in equal measure or even in a bigger magnitude financed oil and gas initiatives that superseded its environmental efforts. So it became a prevailing principle, or it became a prevailing practice that there has to be proportionality in terms of the activities of the business. And of course, we'll include this in the comments that we will share with you. I think it would be important to include that principle in your general principles so that members, when they incorporate that in their advertising, there are considerations for proportionality, materiality, and substantiality of their claims in relation to their overall business activity.
So I just comment there, as far as I know, Angela did look at the ASA UK code,
Okay.
but we would not be looking, we wouldn't look to rulings of other ICAS members for the drafting of a code, but we would look to them when we start interpreting our code. We are very guided, and especially when I'm dealing with a new issue, I will often reach out. For those of you who don't know, ICAS is the International Organization of Self-Regulatory Organizations. And when I hit something that I don't really know what to do, where we stand, I reach out and I say to all the other self-regulating countries around the world, what do you do in a situation like that? And that informs what we do. But that having been said, that sounds like a really useful submission. I'm sure you are going to put it in writing for us. And I think something that we can definitely look at.
Yeah, I think in the normal general principles under Advertising Regulatory Board, it does cover, I think, some of those aspects, but I think making it specific to the environmental general principles, I think, is important. And I think that's something else that I would really love to get feedback on, is those general principles. You know, are they clear? Are they understandable? Are there maybe too many? Are there too few? That would be very interesting to know.
Good morning, everyone. My question is around the general principles and approach as we go into the next stages of looking at the code. So EPR regulations did incorporate the South African Bureau of Standards for eco-labeling as well as for claims, and that became law enforceable from last year, I think, in November. So as we start looking at the code, what I'd like to understand is how will the code regard the legislation as a source compared to other codes that we're also looking at, considering that we also have a law now that deals with these issues, because I think that's important to establish as we go into the next stages.
Do you want to address?
I'm not 100% sure I'm understanding the question completely, but I think we have in every area where we self-regulate. There are laws and there are self-regulation. We try not, if you pick up a conflict, please let us know. We've tried to be careful, but please let us know.
Yeah. So it would be around the ISO 14021 and ISO 14024, because those are parts of EPR regulations, so they are legislated. And I think it's important that as we look at definitions for recyclability, biodegradable, and all of those terms, that we look at the law first to make sure that we are not introducing a conflict. Because with some of the codes that we're looking at, especially from the EU, from the ICC, they are way ahead from where we are. So I think it's important that we look at what is legislated and what the ambition is. I'm not saying that the ambition is not correct, but I think it's important to be able to have that understanding and a common understanding across all stakeholders. Thank you.
I do want to just add to that, so we always try not to be in conflict of the law, but sometimes we do go further than the law in self-regulation. So sometimes we go, the law has said X, but actually X is not enough to protect the consumer. We're going X plus 1. As long as the plus 1 isn't changing the X of the law, this is so me to make it into a mathematical equation. As long as the plus 1 isn't changing the value of X, we might go further. And that's a big part of making self-regulation work, is that the industry needs to come to the party before government has to tell us what to do. Self-regulation is only going to work as long as the industry comes to the party first, so that we constantly show that as an industry we can self-regulate. But we will check carefully that the +1 is not changing the X.
So thank you for that. So for those of you who don't know the EPR, it's the Extended Producer Responsibility that's come into play. And I think you're referring to the ISO 14021, which is actually, thank you, which is actually included in my references, but under SABS. So one of the SABS under self-declaration labels actually relates the standards directly to the ISO, and so does the Canadian Advertising Association as well. So a lot of the global standards have actually looked to the ISO. And I'm keeping my eye on that because I am constantly, like I said earlier, these references and sources keep changing. They keep evolving. So I have to be on my toes all the time to make sure that what we are presenting is correct. But it does incorporate the ISO. But I think it'll be good to look at the EPR just in terms of the communication aspect, the marketing side, and the claims for that. So thank you.
I'm going to have to start paying her soon, aren't I?
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. Two of our members have already asked questions, and Shlanzeka was the last one. So it's really just to add on what she's already said. Sorry, my name is Adelia from the CTFA. When we went through that first draft, the one thing that was very, I would say, maybe obvious, is that we need to consider in the cosmetic and personal care industry the local legislation. So I know the definitions have come mostly from international fora, but we do need to, we've already got in our industry waste legislation, we got the EPR, our definitions are already, there are certain definitions that are similar but not the same. So, and all with the consumer in mind. The DFFE, the Department of Environmental Affairs, I know it's a much longer acronym, but I call them that, they are very active in our industry. So I think one of the areas we really need to look at is local, and does it fit into the South African context? And although we're going to follow best practice, which we absolutely agree with, international best practice, we need to South Africanize whatever we put together on this code so that it works both internationally and locally, and we don't go against any of the legislation that's in place. So I just wanted to sort of put that there as well.
Thank you.
We'll obviously have to be talking to you, Angela, so that we've got a lot to share on the legislation side.
Can't wait. Can't wait. Okay, but thank you for that. I know that there were my previous drafts to Gail. She has already looked at a lot of it from a South African context, and a lot of the comments that came back was, nah, probably not for South Africa. No, impossible. So we have been through that process, and it definitely needs to be refined. So thank you.
And Adelia, you will give us in writing. Yeah, I know.
Please.
I know you will. Oh, yay.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you so much for this opportunity. It's great to be a part of this workshop. Thank you. I think just carrying on from the local context, looking at the waste streams in terms of home, municipal, and industrial, how are we going to accommodate the varying infrastructure in our municipalities? So that's just a question to consider.
So that was actually one of the things I took out of it.
Yeah.
So Angela wanted us to have that you could only make those claims if the municipal facilities existed.
Yeah.
I think that's too big an ask for South Africa. I don't think we can, if you could only make the claims if the municipal facilities existed in the place where the product was available, you'd never be able to make those claims. So what we've kind of settled on for the first iteration is that if it is theoretically recyclable, for example, and Angela, please correct me if I'm getting it wrong, if it's theoretically recyclable in a municipal facility, that is good enough. The fact that the municipal facility is not there is not the marketer's fault or the ARB's responsibility for this iteration of the code, which is different from international codes where they require you. So they say, if you're selling it in the village in Northern Cape and there's no recycling facility there, you can't make the claim. That's not going to work for us. It's just not. I don't know if that answers the question, and I don't know if you want to take it further.
So I just want to add to that. So the reason I originally had it in as well for South Africa was we actually don't have many industrial facilities, and maybe you can talk to that, for certain plastics, as an example, for recycling. So our new plant-based plastics, I think there's one facility that can recycle those, and I think they're based in the Western Cape. So industrial facilities are limited in South Africa. I'm still doing research to actually understand how many facilities are out there. And I think this is an opportunity for industry to really create some sort of map or guidelines on the different waste stream availabilities and where people can actually take. I think once this code is published, once people start becoming aware that you can't just put compostable on a cup, it needs to go to an industrial facility. I'm hoping that the industry, waste industry, will say, hey, this is where you can take it. You know, maybe it creates opportunities for people to collect compostable cups and take them to recycling. So I think it's an opportunity as well. I don't know if that also answers your question.
No, it does. Can I ask another quick question? In terms of carbon neutrality and offsetting, I don't know if there is a law about it, but in terms of purchasing global offsets and you claiming local neutrality, if that makes sense.
So there are different registries like the CDP, Global Standard. We have our own carbon tax as well. And as far as I'm aware, a lot of those projects are local-based projects. I worked with a client last year or 2 years ago that we actually found a lot of those projects were almost bought out quickly. There wasn't enough demand of local projects. So I need to go and do my research. But as far as my understanding is, buying from a global project, making it and then assuming that it's carbon neutral. I think we need to look at that in a little bit more depth, and I think we can look to the carbon tax in terms of SAGES, which is our local register for carbon offsetting. That might be a good place to start, to go and have a look.
Thank you. I was just thinking of multinationals and where they're based, and if they have a home base.
It's a very interesting exercise if you go visit SAGES. Just go onto their website and just go and have a look, and you'll be able to see what some of the projects are that are happening locally. It's actually quite interesting.
Great. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Good morning. My name is Precious. Gail, thank you very much for taking us through this morning. And Angela, you've done a stellar job. I think for me, it's more of a comment more than a question. Some of the questions that I had as you went through the different principles and the claims this morning sparked food for thought, which were then later answered. I think just my last comment would be a possible partnership or collaboration with other industry bodies, such as IPSA, who's the Institute of Packaging SA, that take through professionals for training, for awareness and education. I went through a program myself. I'm a member of MASA. However, when I went through the IPSA program, all the different breakdowns of the reusable, refillable, the compostable were not touched on, and I would have liked to have seen them. So it was just a comment from my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I think also remember it's a new code, so the education around it will, when we pass it as a code, hopefully education around it will step in, and then Yasmin, we will make a note about IPSA. We try and get as many credible industry bodies as members of the ARB as we can, So I will have a look at what they're about, if they would qualify as a member, and then I'll approach them if they do. Okay, I think there might still be some yummy snacks out there. And so you can ask any questions in person that you want to ask. Please ask Angela the hard ones and me the easy ones. Once again, thank you so much to ENS for letting us use your facilities. It's been amazing. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jessica. And go and have some nice snacks.